Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the People's International Chat Show, Wednesday, the 10th of February, 2021. Thank you all for joining us. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical problems. I was quickly out changing my name by deed poll. I'm not Raimond Daijkstra. I'm still Colin Macpherson. The real Raimond Daijkstra is up there in the corner. But anyway, we've got another great show lined up for you tonight. As I say, thank you for joining us. Please, as always, share the show, engage with us in the comments as much as possible. We've got on our panel tonight, would you please welcome Gwenno Dafydd from Wales. Good evening, Gwenno.
Good evening, Colin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. You're on the panel for the first time. Would you like to say maybe a couple of words about yourself?
A couple of words is going to be very difficult because I can talk for Wales. So my name is Gwenno Dafydd, and in my professional life, I'm a leadership and public speaking coach. I have been a professional performer for the last 40 years, and I write songs and lyrics for songs. And I'm passionately Welsh, and I am passionately for independence, both in Scotland and in Wales.
That sounds good. We'll certainly look forward to hearing you talking for Wales tonight. Unfortunately, due to our technical problems, we won't be able to show the videos that we had lined up, but yeah, another time we certainly have them, and maybe we'll get you on the show in another few weeks and we'll get slightly less technical problems. Also on the panel tonight is the real Raimond Daijkstra from Netherlands for Scottish Independence. Hi, Raimond, how you doing?
Doing great, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. You know, we just had the lockdown extended until the 7th of March now.
Yeah, same here.
So apparently they're going to open hairdressers and barber shops on the 1st of March. So I actually posted in Facebook about an hour ago, I'm looking for a barber's that serves beer. And also, welcome back tonight. He's been on the show before, former MSP and interim leader of Action for Independence, Dave Thompson. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
I'm fine, Colin. And yourself?
I'm fine as well. Struggling through like all of us are.
There we are.
But of course, and this brings us nicely onto our first topic. And again, for full transparency, full disclosure, as many of you will know, I am also involved in the steering group for Action for Independence. And last Friday, Action for Independence finally got registered by the Electoral Commission, which means we're ready to go.
Okay.
It means we can stand at the Holyrood election just 3 months from now. Dave, for those that maybe haven't seen too much about it, what is the concept behind AFI, Action for Independence?
Thanks, Colin. Yeah, it was great to get our registration. They took 18 weeks, whereas their normal time is 6. And we just can't understand why they delayed us as long as they did. But we've now got 12 weeks to the Scottish election to get everything in motion. But we haven't been wasting our time. We've been getting all of our foundational stuff sorted out behind the scenes, and we're ready to go. The basic concept is a very simple one. In the Scottish elections, you actually have 2 different votes. You have a vote for a constituency MSP, member of the Scottish Parliament, and that's just the normal traditional first past the post. The person with the most votes wins the constituency seat. And there are 73 constituency seats in the Scottish Parliament. And then you have 56 what they call regional list seats, which is a top-up system. It was originally divided, it's called the D'Hondt or the amended D'Hondt system. And the number of seats you get in the list depends to a great extent how many seats you win in the constituencies. So a party that stands in the constituencies and the list, if they do really well in the constituencies, like the SNP will do on the 6th of May, forecasts that they'll get 70 out of the 73 seats, which is a majority in the Parliament in its own right. You just need 65 for a majority. But then the 56 seats on the regional list, some of them will maybe go to the Greens, not very many. the vast majority will go to unionist parties, to Labour, Tory and Lib Dem parties. But our concept is that if you stand only on the list and you're not connected at all with the SNP, so you don't have any constituency seats to count against your vote on the list, that you can actually sweep up a whole lot of seats. And all that needs to happen is that the small parties unite under our AFI banner. They keep all their own policies, but we'll negotiate with them. We've got one small party on board already. We'll negotiate some winnable places for them on the regional lists. Top 1, 2, 3 are winnable in our view. And we're trying to unite all the smaller independents supporting list parties. So we have a united front on the list vote. And if we can get the people who would normally vote SNP with their second vote and basically throw that vote away, if they vote for us, we can get anywhere from 12 to 24 additional MSPs on top of the SNP's 70, which would give us 90 or more in the Scottish Parliament. And at the same time, we get rid of a whole lot of unionist MSPs who get in on the list because their parties get no constituency seats, so they sweep up most of the list seats. So it's a very simple concept. It's been approved. We would do, as I say, a wee deal. We'll enter into an agreement, a very loose agreement with the other smaller parties, and we invite all of them that haven't spoken to us yet to come on board and create what we're calling a super majority in the Scottish Parliament. And our slogan is Max the Yes, maximize the yes vote. It's a tactical, strategic way of approaching the election. And we do believe that the unionists are scared stiff of us. And we suspect that the delay in our registration was maybe because they are really scared. But we're ready to go now. We'll be firing forward over the next 12 weeks. A lot of work to do, but watch this space on the 6th of May. We're open for membership if people want to look at our website, afi.scot, 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 and join us. And we're actually giving free membership up until the 1st of June. But we will be asking folk for donations, obviously, towards our election campaign.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Gwenno, I know that you weren't aware of AFI till a few days ago, and we were talking in the chat just the last few days what the concept was, and I know you've looked at some of the links I sent you. What do you think? Is that something that you think could work for Scotland? Is it something that you would see, you would welcome in Wales?
Absolutely. I think it is an absolutely brilliant idea. And it's such a shame that it wasn't used previously. I would agree with David. They are really, really scared about the possibility of this actually clearing up the second band of possible seats. They are very scared because otherwise, why would Boris have come up to Scotland recently? They are, in Westminster, they are quaking. So I think that the reason it's taken so long is definitely to do with that. I would welcome this approach in Wales because I think that the wave of people who are starting to become informed and interested in independence has grown exponentially over the last few months. And that is to do with the way that that we have gone our separate ways to Westminster when dealing with the COVID crisis. Now, that's a totally separate matter, but the situation we have in Wales is, it's very, very unusual because we have a Labour government with a Labour majority, which is headed by Mark Drakeford, who has done a very good job in the COVID crisis. And then we have the other parties. Plaid Cymru is the second biggest party in Wales, and it has been linked with the Independence Party for many, many years, but independence as a word was a taboo word. But what has happened over the last, certainly the last 6 months, is that the feeling towards being indie curious has really exploded. And I think that it's to do with dissatisfaction with Westminster and the way that certain decisions have been made independently of Westminster, which have proved that we can do things differently. We have had different approaches, and people are starting to be, they are curious. They are not sort of putting their head on the line and saying, yes, I want independence, but they're starting to actually find out about it. Because in the past, what we used to have was, Wales is too small, Wales is too poor, we can't go it alone. We've been too dependent on handouts from Westminster. And I think because we have the Labour government in situ, lots of people, we have certain areas in Wales, for example, the valleys, which are Labour strongholds. And they're Labour strongholds because my father voted Labour, my grandfather voted Labour. It's a historical vote. And I think that now people are starting to question, well, could we do things differently? It's obvious we've managed to do things differently over the last few months. You know, so they're really starting to look at the economic value of it. And I think that, you know, they will probably still vote for Labour, and they will probably still vote for Plaid Cymru. Those are the two major parties. But I think that if we brought this on board, I think it would have a very, very positive effect on those people who want to really, really push the independence project forward. So I would welcome it. Although how you would persuade people in Wales to do that, I don't know. I'd be very interested to hear how you were able to put this together at grassroots, really, because the Yes Cymru independence movement was sort of started in Wales about 4 or 5 years ago, and Gwenno Jones was there right at the beginning. The Yes Cymru project has really grown over the last 2 years, and Sean Jobbins has been at the front of this. But what has happened is that recently it's grown from a couple, there were I think about 2,000 members. It's now grown and it's around the 17, 18,000 members. So in the same way that things started growing in Scotland, we look towards you. I came up to Scotland in 2014 because I wanted to support independence movement then, and I wanted to find out more. I wanted to be there, I wanted to see, and I think we can learn so much from the Scottish, our Celtic cousins. So I would definitely want to find out more.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you were saying about the current situation in Wales, Dave was probably having a wee smile to himself because, of course, Dave, when you first joined the SNP, that was the situation in Scotland. Indeed, it was until very recently the situation in Scotland that it was a Labour stronghold and folk voted Labour because that's what my dad did, that's what my grandfather did. I mean, Dave, I don't think there is any easy solution to what Gwenno has been saying. How do we go that extra step where we're at the stage now in Scotland, of course, where we have a consistent majority in the polls in favour of independence? Is it just a case of a lot of hard work over many years, or is there something that maybe our cousins in Wales could do to kickstart things a wee bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there has been a lot of hard work over many, many years by a relatively small number of people from way back in the 60s when I joined, right through the 70s, the 80s, the ups in the 70s, and then the down again. But since our referendum, when we got our first SNP government in 2007, which was a minority government, it worked well for 4 years. And what it did was it showed the Scottish people that the SNP could govern, that the SNP was competent. And I was very privileged to be a member of that government at that time. And then, of course, you know, we got our referendum in 2014, and that moved us on again. And when we lost the referendum, it was after that, I think a lot of people had been awakened during the 2013-14, the run up to the referendum in 2014. So we got a real boost from that. And I actually think that we can learn some things from Wales in terms of the broad movement they have there. And hopefully we're a bit ahead of them, I think, in the actual stakes in terms of obviously having had a referendum and moving rapidly now towards our independence. I'm quite convinced of it. So when we get our independence, let's say we get that in the next year or two, it'll take a couple of years for us to negotiate it after we win it in a referendum or election. That, I think, would then act as a spur for the Welsh people, and they would see what we're able to do, and it would give them encouragement, hopefully, you know, to follow in our footsteps. And I think that is likely to be how this happens. And it's why the Unionists will do their utmost to destroy the Yes movement in Scotland if they can achieve that.
I mean, we saw they were scared in 2014.
Oh yeah.
And they're getting much more scared now, as we're seeing by the day. Folk, unfortunately, we've lost Gwenno, but she's just been in touch. She's going to come and join us again in a minute. In fact, I think that's her just coming back in. So don't panic, folk. Gwenno will be back on the screen in a minute. To move to you, Raimond, going back to our initial topic, this concept of AFI. I know you've been paying a lot of attention to it over the last few months. What do you think about it? Do you think this is something that could work? Do you think it's something that will work?
I definitely think it could work. The thing is, I'm a proud SNP member, but being a proud SNP member doesn't mean you agree with everything. And one thing I do not agree with is the SNP 1 and 2 thing, because the way like David said, the amend the Han system works, there's no way that SNP 1 and 2 could work. Actually, people advocating for the way AFI wants to run in the list voting is they are going to split the vote, and they did that to Solidarity as well in 2016. They keep was it 2016? I think it was, right? Or 2015? I can't remember.
2016.
16, yeah. But the thing is, actually, SNP 1 and 2 is actually splitting the vote itself. And in that aspect, if I just tell people, I'm not telling you to go either way. I'm just telling you, get informed, read up on everything, watch the videos, and it will explain itself.
Oh, sorry, Raymond.
No, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if people go into our website, there's a wee video there that explains the system really well. But I'll give you a statistic. In 2016, the SNP got just under 1 million votes on the regional list vote, about 957,000 votes. And you know how many seats they got for that? 4. 250,000 for each seat. The Labour Party and the Tories got the same amount of votes, just under 1 million votes, and they got 44 seats for the same million votes. So those million SNP votes, if a quarter of them came to AFI, we would get 16 seats. Just a quarter of them came to us, we would win that number of seats.
Exactly.
So that's the message we're trying to get across to people. Don't use your There were 6 regions in Scotland where the SNP vote, it was round about 700,000 votes in total, got 0 extra regional list seats. Places like Glasgow and Central and so on, and Lothian and the Northeast, they got no additional seats under that system.
Gwenno, can I bring you in?
Yeah. What I'd like to say is, in some ways, it's a little bit like the Electoral College, isn't it? You know, which doesn't seem to be a fair system. However, it's about, I mean, what you're talking about is obviously not fair. It's not right. It's not correct. because there are so many people who are disenfranchised because although they voted for the SNP, they don't have an opportunity to have a representative. So their voice is not being heard in any way whatsoever.
Exactly.
In some ways, it's similar to the Electoral College in America, which, if it were run fairly, then it does give people the opportunity to have their voices heard. I mean, I think that what happened when Trump won the electoral vote was that there was a great deal of intervention there from places like Russia, which, so if you can make sure that that doesn't happen, then I think that it's a great way of moving forward to enable people to have their voices heard.
Well, of course, what you could argue is that the whole concept of AFI allows more folk to have their voices heard, not specifically SNP voters, but independent supporters who aren't pro-SNP.
Exactly.
Because the smaller independent supporting parties who on their own probably wouldn't have a chance of getting a regional seat, under the AFI banner, they have a chance of getting a winnable seat.
Yeah.
And then having, from all spectrums of the pro-independence movement, you would have all spectrums who would then be represented at Holyrood. You would have independents standing for AFI, who again would have their own policies.
Yep.
And so you would be actually having more folk represented at Holyrood than if we just said, okay, we'll let the SNP win the constituency seats and the Tories and Labour get in by default. Raimond, very quick, because I want to come to the comments on the chat.
No problem. Now, the thing was, a lot of people, I see a lot of people online saying that we tried to split the votes as well in 2016. Tommy did a great video on the Hon system as well, but they in the Glasgow area only got about 2,000 votes. I think it was around 2,000 to 4,000 votes, and they still, after that speech, they still accused him of splitting the vote. Now, even without the Hon system, 4,000 votes don't make a dent in the whole seats in the can't think of the word. Well, you know what I'm getting at. I mean,
yeah,
4,000 votes in the whole scheme of things, it doesn't change anything. But they still accused him of splitting the vote. No, SNP and a lot of people also say 2011 they got a lot of. I think it was 2011 they got a majority with SNP 1 and 2. Yeah, they did, but that was because they unknowingly beat the system because they got less votes in the constituency vote, and that's where the majority came from.
It was very much a freak result.
Yeah,
it was. Can I just give a quick comment before
please,
you
yes.
on, Colin? The 2011 result compared to the 2016 result, I mean, none of us expected to win the way we won in 2011.
No.
That's not hiding anything. I was a candidate and won the Skyloch Aber and Badenoch constituency for the SNP at that time. But the difference between 2011 and 2016, there's one stark difference, and that is that the Tories, with Ruth Davidson as their leader, realized that the way to game the system on the regional list, which is what we were accused of by people, was to unite the unionist vote. So their mantra was quite simple, and they went through the whole election: vote Tory to stop independence, vote Tory to max the unionist vote. And a whole lot of Labour unionist voters voted Tory. The Tory vote doubled, more or less, between 2011 and 2016, and their number of seats doubled. So they went from 12 seats to 24, because they did what we're now going to do. They united unionists, and they didn't need a huge number of votes, and they had a massive benefit from that. And that is why 2011 and 2016, you can't compare now with then. We've learned a lesson. We're trying to say to people, don't waste your second vote if you're going to vote SNP in the constituencies. because as long as everybody votes SNP in the constituencies, and that's what we advocate. We are pro-SNP and we're pro-Scotland. So we want everybody to vote SNP in the constituency, but don't throw your vote away in the regional list. Use it for AFI. And we want to unite everybody so that the wee parties that might get 1 or 2% of the vote and get nowhere near an MSP, together with us, we can actually get a dozen, 16, 20 or more MSPs just by being savvy about how we use our vote.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is an electoral system which we have, and that is these are the parameters that the election is run under, and therefore it is legitimate to choose your tactics according to the parameters of the system which we have. I'm going to come into the comments on the show. There's quite a lot. I've no idea if I'm going to get through any of them. I can't even see who's all watching, but big shout out to Nancy McIver, Alison Clark, Ian Middleton, Faye Kennedy, Sandra Wallace, Johnny Rudkin, William Forbes, Melanie McCain, Luke Jones, Betty Morris, Chris Curran, Amanda Cormack, Winnie Greer, Vince Brown, Robert McCaw. I'm just also trying to see if there's any questions that folk might have specifically for Dave. Ruth Wilson, hello. Les Lukovsky. I'm scrolling a lot here on my mobile, so please bear with me. Miriam Gordon, Dennis Bell, Jerry Gorman, Mark Riddle, Colin Smith, Anne-Marie Drugan, lots of regular viewers. As I say, thank you all for joining us again. Dennis Bell, the simplest, most direct manifesto possible, please. I'll come to you, Dave, when I've gone through all the questions. Jock Gibson, a question for the panel. Where is the mandate percentage calculated from, being the technical percent that is referred to as a political guide? Linda Rose, we need a vote for independence in May. Stephen Kelly, so why did Gordon Ross quit the ISP if there's not an anti-SNP attitude? Stephen, you'll have to ask Gordon why he quit the ISP. The ISP is not AFI. AFI, again, as Dave underlined, promotes the constituency vote for SNP. And again, follow the media coverage, follow the Twitter, Facebook accounts. We're not in the game of slagging off the SNP. That's not our job. We want to present the supermajority as what we want to be running for. Jock Gibson suggests maybe set a plebiscite in the manifesto of all indie parties. Ian Middleton, your vote may not count in the list vote due to the D'Hondt system where votes are reduced when seats are won. Just coming through. Robert Wilson, good evening all from Rob the Scotsman in Wales. A question for Gwen from Dennis Bell. Gwen, your Labour voters must understand the huge shift to the right and capitalist by Labour since Blair.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What do you want to say about that?
Do you want to comment about that?
Well, I think that they've become pretty disillusioned, really, because of the huge shift to the right, because Wales is a socialist country. And, you know, we have the heavy industries which have disappeared. So, of course, it's a heavily unionized country, or at least it was. So that's where that connection, the link with the unions, the Labour movement, and all of that. So the disillusion with the Labour Party probably goes hand in hand with that. So I don't know what exactly you need me to answer your question on, but I think that, yes, there are lots of people who have become disillusioned with the Labour Party in Wales. And I think that Plaid Cymru have gathered up a lot of those votes. And I think they've made a decision that they want to give Plaid an opportunity to show what they can do. And some people are still disillusioned with Mark Drakeford, with some of the decisions he has made during the last 6 or 7 months. And they are actually becoming indie-curious because of that. But I think the big thing that was always a problem in Wales was the fact that it was a historical vote because their fathers and grandfathers had voted Labour. And what tended to happen as well was that the wives would follow what their husbands did. So fortunately, we're no longer in that situation where women vote as their husbands do. They are more willing to have independent thoughts. So yeah, that's about it, really.
Yeah, very good. I'll come to you, Dave. Just maybe one final point from the comments from Thomas MacArthur. Too many small indie groups will split the vote too much. I wish we had only two. That would be so easy.
Well, that's exactly what we are trying to achieve. It's very, very simple, really. AFI, our constitution, has one policy, independence for Scotland, and making sure that Scottish independence supporting government are helped to get independence. That's our policy. We don't have, and we're not going to develop, a whole range of other policies. However, a small party not joining us, they don't join, they unite with us. They stand under our AFI banner. So let's say Solidarity have actually come on board, and we're opening negotiations with them very soon to allocate some winnable places to them. So we'll negotiate 1, 2, 3, I don't know, the negotiations will sort that, winnable places in a couple of the regions, 2 or 3 of the regions or whatever. And Solidarity will nominate the people to stand in those places. But these folk will stand as AFI candidates, not as Solidarity candidates. But they will be able, as long as they support independence, they will be able to pursue their own parties, Solidarity policies, as much as they want. And they'll, if they were in maybe the, I don't know, the Central region or Lothian region, they would be the local champion for that region. That's what I expect a lot of our MSPs to be. But in addition to small parties uniting with us, and we're hoping to get a few, we will also be filling the other available places with individuals. So people like Martin Keatings, who has been taking the legal case on Section 30, has joined AFI, and he's put himself forward for a top place in the Mid-Scotland and Fife region. Now, he'll have to take his chance with anyone else that puts their name forward, and our members will vote. But let's say Martin got the top place in Mid-Scotland and Fife. Martin's got views on quite a number of things, but he would be the champion for Mid-Scotland and Fife. So he's an individual. So we're going to have a mixture of individuals across Scotland fighting for their own regions, championing their own regions, and also people from smaller parties who are in there arguing the case for their policies. And they can be left-wing, they can be to the right. We're not too fast. They can have pro-GRA policies or anti-GRA policies. AFI will not take a stand on that. That is not what we're about. We are purely about uniting the vote and saying, instead of having the SSP and Solidarity and the ISP and Scotia Future, and there's another 2 in the pipeline, instead of having 6 or 7 small parties that get 1% each, they come together with us, stand under the AFI banner, we get the 6 or 7% at least, and that 6 or 7% gives us 8 MSPs. So there you are, right away by uniting, you get 8 MSPs. And then if you unite and can show a united front to all the voters who vote SNP on the regional list, they'll come over, they'll realise what's happening, and they'll want to make use of their second vote and actually elect MSPs. So it's a big task in some ways, but yet again, when you look at it, it's not that big. We don't need that many people who would normally vote SNP on the list, yes voters or SNP members or whatever, to achieve what we're trying to achieve. And it's all about unity, not division. And that is what we're about.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Gwenno.
I think that that's it, the simplicity is its brilliance. I think that as somebody said previously, make sure your policies aren't complicated or keep them simple. And one policy is just all you need, because when they go into Holyrood, they will have their own specific agendas, which they will be fighting for. But it's exactly that. It's the united front. And as you mentioned before, the Conservatives did it previously and it worked. So why shouldn't it work this time? Because what you've had a huge shift since that time of pro-independence in Scotland. And because they saw how Gordon Brown came up the last week of before the election and shafted the Scottish people and basically, you know, told them lies, and they've realised that they were lied to, and they wisened up. And I think that this is a very fun, really, really brilliant approach to actually moving forward as one, as you say, because I think it's the biggest cause of this century for Scotland. And they were robbed, they were tricked in 2014, but they won't be, not next time. And although Westminster may say it's your once in a generation opportunity, that's what Westminster says. What Scotland says is going to be totally different, because you've got the power now, because you've got more people on your side than you did. So I think this is an excellent idea.
We've also developed what we call a route map to independence. And our route map basically is that if there's a majority of independence supporting MSPs in the Scottish Parliament, then that is an absolute reiteration of the mandate for a referendum. But the more crucial point is this: we've asked the other parties, including the SNP and the other independence supporting parties, to add into their manifestos, and we'll have it in ours, that if there is a majority vote in the Scottish Parliament across the constituencies and the lists, over 50%, that is a mandate for independence itself.
Brilliant.
It's a plebiscite, it's a proper election. If people know that if they vote SNP, if they vote AFI, that they will actually be voting for independence and the right for the elected government to negotiate that independence, then that is where we should go. So that is the other thing, the other plank, if you like, that we're putting forward and saying to people, if you really want independence, help us to convince the SNP that they should have it in their manifesto. The Greens should have it in their manifesto if they really want independence. And we will. And if we all do that, and we get more than 51% of the vote, we've got our independence. We start negotiating, and within 2 years, we're looking after ourselves the first time in over 300 years. What's not to like?
What's not to like?
Yeah, very much. There's lots and lots of questions, and they're coming in by the second, especially directed to you, Dave, for AFI. We wanted to give Dave a platform tonight. We will have AFI representatives on the show over the next few months on a regular basis where you can put their questions. But AFI will also be having their own online events, certainly for the moment. And ideally, if lockdown is in some way lifted or relaxed near the elections, obviously campaigning, championing doors, hustings and whatever. So I'm very sorry that we can't take any more of the questions, because otherwise this would be an AFI show, and unfortunately tonight we don't have time for that, because we do have one topic that we still want to talk about. But maybe this is quite interesting for all of you. It was something that was suggested, I think, by William Forbes last week, is that you might like to have a blether at the bar after the show. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a blether at the bar after the show. The way it's going to work is that once the show has gone off air, give us 5 or 10 minutes. We've got a couple of things just we need to discuss amongst ourselves. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes, we will open up the Zoom call to anybody who wants to come and join us. just for a wee blether. I don't know how many of the panelists will be there. That's not what they signed up for. I mean, I know that Gwenno, you said you have things to do. Dave, I think you said you probably would have to rush off because you've got other things to do. I will be there, and if we want to have a wee blether together, absolutely happy to do that. We'll post the Zoom link at the end of the show onto the comments. Feel free to come and join us. The next topic, though, I really would like to move on to, and we haven't got much time left because AFI obviously is something which a lot of folk are very interested in finding out more about. But I don't know if any of you watch the BBC. In the BBC, they have this program on a Sunday morning, The Big Question. And it's this moral discussion where you have everything from the Tory Lord saying that all these old folk, it doesn't matter, they get COVID, so you should lift the lockdown, through to other matters. I mean, it's the sort of show that if you've got nothing else to do, you might sort of listen to with one ear while you're playing Candy Crush. But one topic, they were talking about Scottish independence on Sunday, and they had Lockie, the rapper, on. And he was saying that all this talk in the COVID pandemic about, obviously the unionists are saying Scotland couldn't have coped in the pandemic without the strong arms and the broad shoulders of the union, ignoring many other independent countries across Europe and across the world who seem to be doing quite a bit better than the so-called United Kingdom. At the same time, of course, obviously independent supporters are saying, well, again, I think you mentioned it as well, Gwenno, in Wales, this is where folks see how your own government can actually make a difference. Now, Lockie's point was, he says he tends to switch off when he hears that because that is politicizing a pandemic, and you can't make those sort of claims because you really don't know. I know, Raimond, you had another point about the pandemic you want to speak about, but just as a general introduction to the final topic, are folk politicizing the pandemic? And for example, for independent supporters, how can you show you could do better on your own without being accused of politicizing it? Gwen, I'll start with you.
Oh, lots of questions. I have a very short memory span, so you're going to have to remind me again. But the first thing I would say is the personal is political. I am a feminist. I always have done. So why shouldn't a pandemic be a political experience? Because we have been living through this pandemic, and all our lives have been absolutely curtailed by political decisions, bad political decisions, if I may say so as well. And I think Boris has shown what a weak Prime Minister he is. I think that the Prime Ministers from all the other countries have showed their mettle. They've done things differently. So I think that every single country seems to have done better than England, because the Prime Minister of England, who he's been called the Prime Minister of England because he's made decisions which are specifically for England, and Mark Drakeford, our Prime Minister in Wales, and the rest of the areas, the rest of the countries in the UK have made their own decisions, and the own decisions, some have been good, some have not. But for Boris Johnson to maintain that things, it's all very hypothetical. No one knows how we would have coped had we been able to shut the borders when we chose to. No one knows how things would have been if we'd been able to invest in PPE as specific countries. No one knows how the deaths would have been lessened if we were able to say every single old people's home has to have vaccines in the first week when vaccinations were able. It's all hypothetical, and it's all a load of nonsense, really, because we can't live in a hypothesis. We can only live in a reality. And the reality is that England has fared far worse from the deaths than all the other countries. So I feel that this has been a very good example of how we can do things differently. And that, I think I referred to it earlier on, is one of the reasons why people are becoming indie curious, because they've never had this opportunity of really seeing properly what the Welsh Assembly government has been able to do, and to do things differently from Westminster. And I think that they've had a lot of confidence from seeing how we can do things differently, because we have lived under these three conditions: you're too small, you're too you haven't got enough money, and also you've just been living on handouts. Those three tenets have suppressed us for so long. But now I think that we've had this opportunity to see we can do things differently. We can save more lives even. And I think another thing that's shifted during the pandemic is that we have started to realize that the way we've been living our lives in a very consumer-based way is not the right approach. And I think that what has come from this pandemic is we're starting to realize what really, really is important. What is important? It's human contact. It's helping each other's. It's living a different sort of life. It's not about making billions of pounds. It's not about the financial way of living. It's about supporting each other in communities. And I think that that bodes well for independence, because that gives us a better feeling of who we are and where we're based from, where we come from, where we're heading for in the future.
Yeah, thanks. I've been taking a wee bit of flack on the chat I've been seeing for mentioning the broadcaster that this show was on. Now, folk, in Germany, I don't pay a BBC license. So just for information, I'm not involved in that. But I do have ways and means of finding out what is going on. And all I say is, you need to know what the other side is thinking. And so I will continue to watch those programs, and I will report back if necessary for those of you who refuse to watch that particular broadcaster. Raimond, you've been very quiet. You also had a topic you wanted to bring up specifically on this, emphasizing the pandemic.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, and not just with this topic, you see it with every issue that comes up lately. There's always going to be two camps in any situation. With the whole vaccination program in every country, you have anti-vaxxers, you have pro-vaccination. But what really amazes me and saddens me as well is that online they both go at each other in a major way. People get of course if you're typing you're not yelling, but they're basically threatening people that have a certain opinion, whether it be vaccination or any situation, and like we said on the show on numerous occasions, something like that needs to really stop. It doesn't matter if I've got friends that are anti-vaccinations. Myself, I'm for it. That doesn't mean that I don't respect their opinion. And that's where the problem lies. People, and it might have something to do at this moment with the whole lockdown and everything. You want to lash out on your frustrations and everything. I understand that, but people having an opinion, or you shouldn't take it out on that. If somebody doesn't want to get a vaccination, that's their prerogative, and leave it at that. Don't start calling them any foul name in the book. And same goes for the other side. If somebody does want to get the vaccination, don't call them sheep. Don't call them, again, every name in the book. Something that needs to stop, and not just with the vaccinations, with everything, whether it being party policies, whether it being every little thing. It's just ridiculous. Talk to each other. That's what needs to be done. And if we look at the whole bigger picture, Scottish independence, get together, drop every issue that you might have amongst each other, drop it until independence has been achieved. Then you can say, do, like, dislike anybody that you want, but then, and that's your prerogative then, but that's the first thing that needs to happen. But for the love of God, during this pandemic, which is bad enough, don't start on each other just because you have an opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
Ellie agrees with you, Raimond, says Twitter has been extremely toxic lately. And you see it on social media. Obviously, under lockdown, you don't see it so much on the street, obviously. But just as an example, the AfD, this German far-right party that got 20% of the vote at the last elections. My town is a very small town with about 47,000 inhabitants. So 20% of that, you know full well that when you're sitting down the pub or going out to the ice hockey or whatever, 1 in 5 statistically voted for these extreme right loons. Now, I do know some particular folk. One person I do know is very supportive of these measures, but because we're a small town, we also have a member of parliament from the Green Party. And they have a bit of banter on Facebook. They know each other. They've known each other for years. They're bound together by the hockey club, if nothing else. But they can talk civilly with each other. Now, why can't everybody else do that? Dave?
Yeah, I think that whole thing, and Gwenno was mentioning earlier, you know, that a lot of folk are beginning to think about what really matters these days. And it's about people and relationships and being able to hug your children and your grandchildren and your friends and things like that. And I think one of the things that has tipped the balance in favour of the SNP government and Nicola Sturgeon, I know Nicola well, I've known her for a long time, is that she doesn't just come across as being someone who cares. People can see she really does care. Whereas with Johnson, that isn't certainly not apparent to me that he cares. And the whole way that the Tory government in England and any of the governments down there now, because they're all the same, there's no longer a Labour government as we knew it when we were young, a Labour Party. They put business and money before everything. And you can see that in the decisions they make and how they are slow to react. In Australia, where I have relatives, you know, the airline industry was just closed down a year ago. They basically closed their borders. And whereas here, everyone's bending over backwards to try and save the airline industries and everything. And okay, that is commendable in a sense if you're doing it for jobs, but you're actually jeopardizing people's lives. And there's been a massive number of people died with the COVID because of that, because basically money was put before lives. The thing that should have happened, and okay, I've got hindsight, I can look back and say, this is what I would have done. They should have closed us down much earlier. And I'm pretty certain that Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish government wanted to, but they couldn't, because if they did, they would immediately have been accused of playing politics with the pandemic. So they waited and they waited and they kind of went along with it. And that was a mistake. And the Chancellor should have printed the money that he printed, which you can do if you have your own currency. Every country is doing it now. You print the cash, it's not a problem, and made sure that everybody was into the furlough schemes much earlier as well. Now, okay, hindsight, but surely we must learn from these things. I've just started reading a book last night called Lockdown. And it's a book that's written by an author called Peter May, which was published last year, but he wrote it in 2005. And it was following a previous book he'd written, one of his China thrillers, about a viral problem in America. And he'd done a lot of research about this, and he did deep research into what happens if you get it was a bird flu that he's writing about in this one. And he predicted very prescient book, What is Now Happening. So people knew, scientists knew that the chances of something like this happening were very, very high. Nobody wanted to do anything about it because they would have to spend money, wouldn't they, to build the sort of infrastructure that we would need to cope with something like this if it happened. And they don't seem to go in for that kind of preventative thing. Indeed, what did they do in the south in England? They ran the NHS down. They privatized a whole lot of parts of it. Whereas in Scotland, we've made sure that the vast bulk of it has been kept in the public sector. And it's a stronger NHS for it. So, you know, this whole thing about putting money before people is wrong. We need to learn these lessons and move on. And I think that is why Nicola is doing so much better with public opinion, because people know she cares.
Yeah.
Can I just
Gwen?
say, what I'd like to say is that I'm very anti-nuclear and have been forever. And I have to say that this is time for someone to bring up the matter that nuclear weapons have been absolutely useless in fighting this pandemic. And the millions and billions and trillions of pounds that are spent on them, the future of this world is going to be this sort of situation that we will encounter more and more and more. We will not be, I mean, who knows? It could have been germ warfare that started all of this. And Trident has been absolutely useless, absolutely futile. And it's time somebody took this matter and politicized this as well and said, we don't need to spend, you know, I mean, the amount of money that is spent on Trident is obscene, obscene. And what use has it been in this pandemic? None at all.
No, 350 billion pounds is what they're paying to renew and revamp the Trident system at the moment,
obscene,
right
obscene.
now. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it does make Captain Sir Tom's fundraiser pale into some kind of insignificance.
Yeah.
But again, that is the country that Westminster is forcing folk in Scotland into, folk in Wales into, because of splashing money out in things that folk don't need, splashing out the money to their billionaire cronies instead of spending it on real things. Now, normally, and it was, again, a good friend of mine, somebody who's also been on a panel on this show a few times before, Greg Brain, when Captain Sir Tom died, said, at the end of the day, he was out fundraising when we should have been looking after him. That is what Westminster Britain has brought you towards. Well, folk, it's been a really interesting discussion tonight. We're going to go around the panel again for their final comments. Please remember, we will post the link to the Zoom call into the comments and pin it so you can come and join us for a wee blether afterwards. All are welcome. I will let everybody in, and okay, if you're going to get abusive, I'll kick you out again. But apart from that, a wee blether, that's going to be fine. It won't be going on all night, but we've got a wee bit of time left. Raimond, when we close down the show, could you post the link into the comments, please?
Yeah, no problem.
You just need the meeting ID and the password. You don't need to bother with all the other stuff, the phone numbers and everything. So come and join us for a blether at the bar. First time we've done it after the International Chat Show. We'd be happy to stick around for a wee blether with any of you that want to come and join us. But to come to the closing comments for tonight, the real Raimond Daijkstra.
Well, two things. First thing is kind of like a joint thing for us, Colin, that we've already announced it on the Netherlands for Scottish Independence page, but on May 29th, we are doing a joint event online, like we did also last year, an online rally for Scottish independence on May 29th. Last year, I planned it for about 3 hours. It went for 5. So who knows how much fun we're going to have. But yeah, in the coming weeks, we will announce speakers, how we're going to fill it up, but also with musicians as well. So yeah, May 29th, starting at 9 a.m. Scottish time and 10 a.m. European time. And yeah, more info will follow. The second thing I want to say is it's something I've addressed early on in the show, but please, people, especially during this pandemic, respect each other's opinions. Don't go off on anybody, especially online. You're just basically feeding the, putting all on the fire. It doesn't serve any purpose other than make the unionists laugh. So please respect each other's opinions. Enter good conversation, never a problem, but yeah, it doesn't serve any purpose to verbally attack people online just because they have another opinion, whether it being the vaccinations, being it which party you want to vote for, which certain person that you like or dislike. If there's two people that have issues, that you're basically behind one or behind the other, that's of course talk to each other, but don't attack each other online. That's all I want to say. Please respect each other.
Thanks, Raimond. Jock Gibson says, Raimond, when you're announcing a joint rally with Germans for Independence, he thinks that's quite interesting for the Netherlands, talking about a joint rally.
Well, yeah, man.
Seriously, folk, we had actually hoped to organise a march and rally in Berlin for May as well, but just over the last few weeks, we have also decided that it's not tenable to ask folk to come from all across Germany, never mind anywhere else in Europe in the current climate. And so when Raimond made that suggestion, I spoke to my mate Mark, who helps me to organise, or I help him to organise Germans for Independence, and we decided we'll make it online for May. Who knows, maybe in the autumn we might get on the streets of Berlin again, but we will see. Quick point from Ruth Hannerty, can you do Zoom without being on video? And I think somebody else said they didn't want to have their face shown. You don't have to enable the camera function. You can join the Zoom chat only on the audio. Gwenno, your closing remarks, please.
Well, first and foremost, can I just thank you all for having this opportunity to hear more about AFI. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I would welcome that happening in Wales. It's a little bit of a shame that we didn't have an opportunity to play the videos. I've written a song. The words came to me when I was up campaigning in Edinburgh in 2014. The song was called Alba Gw Brath, Don't Give Up Hoping, Hannah, and it is really an inspirational song.
It is.
It's been recorded, and a young Scottish guy has sung the song for us. I then went and wrote some words in English and in Welsh for the same tune. I feel passionately that there are lots of people in Wales who can't speak the Welsh language, but who are still passionate about independence. And I don't see why they should be missing out on a good song. And there are two films now. There's one film about Alba Gw Brath, and then there's a film for the Welsh version, which is Hear Songs of Dragons, Hear Songs of Dragons Roaring. I've really forgotten what it was called. Hear Sound of Dragons Roaring. And it would have been great to have them performed. But maybe there'll be an opportunity, perhaps in your online parade, march, whatever you want to call it. And the other thing I would like to say is I'm coming up to campaign for Scottish independence. So I'll be looking for somewhere to crash. So do send me some Yes, because I'm coming up. I'll be there like I was last time.
Trust me, Gwenno, once you get to know a lot of these people, you would never be out of a place to sleep. I know.
Yay, I love my Celtic cousins.
I know.
I love them.
Yeah, I'm actually a wee bit torn tonight. We had actually planned, obviously, Gwenno, to have a couple of your songs on the show.
Yeah.
Because we had technical problems. We couldn't, but you never know. We might get you on in a few weeks when we don't have the technical problems, and then you can show your
Definitely.
your videos. I know that Luke Jones has posted a link to at least one of your songs in the
well
comments.
done, Luke, thanks.
So again,
guy.
that's thank
Thanks,
you for
Luke.
that, Gwenno. Dave, your closing remarks, please.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the chat. It's been a great blather this evening. Nice to meet Gwenno, who I haven't met before. I've met yourself, Colin, and Raimond, obviously. So, tap alive, as they would say in Gaelic. Thank you for sending off for tonight. And, you know, we didn't get a chance to touch on bilingualism and the advantages of being bilingual and how it develops your brain much better and so on. But maybe next time, Gwenno, we can have a wee discussion about that.
Will be a great topic. Will be a great standalone topic.
Yeah, thanks very much for the blather. As I say, it's been great. Really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Well, thank you, Dave. And again, I'm sure we'll have you on again in the quite near future, depending obviously on your schedule, which is going to be getting even tighter than it's been over the last few months. But again, we hope to see you back on the show again soon. So we're coming to the end of the show. Gone a wee bit over time, but within reason because we did start late. As always, thank you all for watching us. Thank you all for engaging with us in the chat. Comments, as again, I say every time, I'm sorry we couldn't take every single comment. We'd be here till tomorrow if we did that. But we do appreciate it, and we know you appreciate chatting amongst yourselves on the chat, and that's something that we really do like to see as well. So, as I say, end of the show tonight. Thank you very much to our panel. Thank you to the real Raimond Daijkstra, who should have been our producer tonight, but we had technical problems. Doesn't matter. I'm sure you'll be back producing next week once you got
definitely
out. From the Netherlands for Independence. Thank you to Gwenno Dafydd all the way from Wales. It's great having you on. And again, I hope you will be on again in the coming weeks.
I'd love to.
Thanks to Dave Thompson. Thank you again for coming on and telling us a bit more about what the concept of AFI means. And again, I'm sure you'll be back at some stage soon. So folk, Raimond's going to post the link to the Zoom call in the chat. Yep. Give us about 10 minutes once we come off air. So around about 9:30 Scottish time, we'll open up the Zoom call. You can join beforehand. You go into the waiting room. Don't panic. I'll let you in just a minute. I've got my guests off air, so to speak. And then we can have a wee blather and maybe a wee dram together. Who knows? And as always, stay strong, but more important, stay healthy, stay safe.
Amen.
See you all again next Wednesday night.
I've
been Colin Macpherson for the People's International Chat Show. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Awesome.
And I've just remembered I've actually got to end the feed tonight.
Yep.
So I will